thank you for having me here today to the School Finder Group and Higher Ed Points and TD Bank. I'm going to get right into the presentation, and I'm going to make sure that we have lots of time for questions at the end too. So I'll introduce myself in just a moment. But first, I always like to start my presentations with good news for you. And here is your good news for today. Grade 12 is your best opportunity for a scholarship. There will never be another time in your life where there are more opportunities and less competition. Now, when you get into university or college, there will still be opportunities for scholarships. I am definitely not saying to stop looking at that time, but there are fewer of them, and the dollar figures are not as big as the ones that are earmarked for students who are in high school and entering university for the first time. And I will say that there has really never been a better time in history for scholarships for students, for different kinds of students as well. So it used to be that students needed to be, a top student in order to get a scholarship. That was definitely the case, back in the day, but that is not the case anymore. There are lots of different kinds of scholarships for different kinds of students. So there's really kind of this, golden window of opportunity for you at this time. So I'm hoping that the information that I present to you today will help you to grab hold of some of that opportunity for you. This is me. I'm Janet Macdonald. I'm a former university admissions officer at Dalhousie and UBC in Vancouver. And I also have some scholarship program experience as well. And I started my company, which is called mycampusGPS. I started it because after speaking with thousands of students and parents over the years, I found out that many of them were missing out on free funding simply because they didn't know much at all about scholarships. They didn't know how to find them, and they didn't know how to complete the applications. And even worse, a lot of them didn't even know that they qualified for scholarships, even though many of them did. So they were really missing out on that altogether. And really simply what I do is I help high school students to find and apply for scholarships. And over the years, I've helped students save hundreds of thousands of dollars through free funding and scholarships. Here's what we're going to cover in the session today. First of all, what are scholarships and what makes you eligible and more eligible for them? Things you should do before you start writing. So a lot of students are just anxious to get in there and start writing, but there's some really important information that you can find out before you even start writing. And then we'll talk about actually writing the essay. And, I promise some things that you should always do when you're writing these applications, and then questions at the end. So the first thing I want to do is acknowledge that writing scholarship applications, and particularly the essay, is probably not your favorite thing to do. I mean, maybe you like to write, and if you do, then that's great. That'll be helpful. But even if you don't, these types of essays, they are not about, most of them are not the type of like scholarly or research type of essays. They're about a topic that you know well, because they're about you and they're about your experiences. The other thing that I want you to know is that the people who are reviewing your application, they're nice people. A lot of them, in fact, volunteer their time to read these applications. They're really rooting for you, and they're really hoping for your success. So hopefully those two things just kind of help you to maybe alleviate a little bit of nervousness if you have any at this point. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, what is a scholarship? And just really simply, scholarships are education funding that's offered by an organization. That might be a university, or it might be, a foundation like the TD, or community organizations or sports organizations or whatever. they are based, though, the thing that kind of designates a scholarship is that they are based on merit. And that means the student has to earn them in some way. It might be through grades, although grades are not required for all scholarships. It might be through volunteering, or it might just be through writing an essay. But the student does have to do something to earn them, versus a bursary, which is mainly based on demonstrated financial need. So a scholarship may have demonstrated financial need as a component of it. Some do, some don't. But it's not usually the main criteria. The main thing is this, that they're based on merit. So you will have, because they're based on merit, you will have more opportunities for scholarships based on what you, quote unquote, bring to the table. So what are some of these things that you can bring to the table? Academics, now grades are not required for all scholarships, but they certainly are for universities. They will always have your grades, and so that will always be a factor. But with the ones offered by external funders, so all the other ones, grades may or may not be required. If they are, it's probably around maybe a 75 or an 80. So solid, but not stellar. They're really looking more for that community involvement and volunteering. So community involvement, that might be just playing sports, you're going to church and just doing things in your community and being involved in your community. One of those things around community involvement is volunteering. And I would say volunteering is the type of experience that will qualify you for more scholarships. The other kind of experience is leadership, and that's usually, when we're talking about scholarships, leadership in a volunteer capacity. And I'm going to talk in more detail about what leadership means in terms of scholarships in just a moment. The other thing is credentials. So what I mean by that is, any type of experience that is kind of over maybe a period of time, and you have earned some kind of award or just marker from an outside source. So I'm talking here about things like Royal Conservatory of Music, or a Kiwanis Festival, or Duke of Edinburgh, maybe a case competition or math contest. Those are lifeguarding, those types of things can be nice additions to your scholarship application, just because it shows involvement, it shows perseverance working over a period of time to earn this credential. The other thing is paid work. Paid work looks great on applications. Funders like to see students who are willing to work pay their own way, basically. And paid work, builds those transferable skills, and it just shows good character and work ethic as well. Now, I'm not saying you have to have all of these things, but these are some of the things that will, qualify you for scholarships, basically. I would say, like I say, volunteering is probably the one that is really important. If you don't have any volunteer experience, you will not qualify for as many scholarships. And leadership is really kind of what I call a high value or a high impact activity. And I'll talk about why that is later on. Okay, so that's what scholarships are, and kind of, what helps you to qualify for more of them. Let's talk about the things that you should do before you jump in and start writing. So the first thing is that, or the main thing that you want to do before you start writing, is you need to read the application. And many students don't read the application. They just maybe skip right to the requirements and then start to, write right away. And I'm going to ask you to just kind of step back and read the entire application. Now, maybe not all of the fine print, but the majority of the application. You want to find out who is the funder and what are their mission and values, because who the funder is and why they're giving the money will help to inform how you will present your information in your essay. Okay, so some of them will even say, we we seek to reward students who blah, blah, blah. So that's the type of information, or even just gleaning a little bit about the funder's values will help to inform what you're going to write. So you're wanting to kind of, create, what is the profile? Who are they targeting with this award? And especially if references are required, what traits or skills or qualities are they asking the referee to comment on? So those are the types of things that you want to pull out, the experiences, like the things that you want to talk about in your essay. And the other thing is, there will be some one or more essay questions. Why are they asking those questions? That's what I call the question behind the question. So if it's about a challenge, discuss a time you faced a challenge, for example, are they looking to maybe find out your attitude towards a challenge and your attitudes towards risk? How you rise to the challenge. Is that going to be important, for you to then take on more types of challenges in the future? The other thing is that when you go through the application, you can sometimes find really helpful information like guides or hints or rubrics for the essay. So for example, there was an application that I came across. I just took a snip of a part of it. I found this information in the frequently asked questions. So it wasn't on the first page. I had to kind of find it through a link or two. So sometimes this information isn't staring you straight in the face. You do have to read through and find it. So in this case, it actually says essay judging and how to win. So they're going to point out the things that they want you to cover. So at the end here, organization and grammar and spelling, that's, pretty standard. But look at the first thing that they ask for. Funny, 20% of your, grade or mark will come from whether or not your essay is, you tried to be humorous. Let's say in your essay, it was a funny story that you were telling. If you didn't find this information, you might not have even known that you were supposed to make your essay, a funny story versus a very serious story. So that's an example of why you should read the entire application before you start writing. There might be some really good pieces of information in there that will help you. Okay, let's move on to when you start writing. And we're going to just discuss the main parts of a scholarship application. Now, not all scholarship applications are going to have require all of these pieces of information. Some might require some different pieces, but I'm talking kind of a standard, I guess you would say, scholarship application. So they may require a transcript of your grades, they may not. Often there is a list of extracurricular activities. So that just means the activities that you participate in outside of scheduled school, okay, your schoolwork. There may be one or more references that are required, and then the essay. So if they have these pieces of information, for example, they'll know what your marks are. They'll know, what kind of student you are, essentially. They'll have a list of your activities, so they'll know the types of activities that you participate in. They'll probably will know how often you participate in them. They might ask for, the number of hours per week or month or something. So they'll know how you spend your time, basically. And then your references, we'll talk about, about your character and things like that. So the purpose of the essay is to get to know you. This is your opportunity for you to talk about yourself and the things that are important to you, okay, in relation to how it fits with the scholarship. Most of the essays in these types of scholarships, they are mostly what we call self-reflective essays. So they're meant to reflect on your experiences and kind of pull out your learning. Tell us about a time that you blah, 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 or tell us about an experience that you had blah, blah, blah. Some of the essays won't be this kind. They might be like a future plans type of essay, like tell us about your future plans. What type of program are you taking and what career have you selected or something like that. They might be maybe for, let's say, a business program or business, more of a business type of thing. It might be a little bit more kind of a success oriented, like really talking about skills and successes that you've had and that sort of thing. But many of them are these self-reflective kind of experience ones. So that's what we're going to focus on here today. Now, this is not a grocery list of your activities. These types of essays are not, you know, I did this and then I did that, and then I did this and then I did that. That's not what these are about. They have your activities list. They know the types of activities that you have participated in. So don't waste your essay content on that type of stuff. You want to get personal. And by that, I just mean talk about your motivation for getting involved in the things that you get involved in, and your kind of the feelings and the learning and how that experience changed you or affected you or impacted you in some way. So, you know, with that list of activities, that's great. They'll know, you know, what you participate in, but they won't know why you participate in them, and they won't know what you've learned through those things. So the essay is your chance to let them know that type of information. And it's best to have one or two examples, and you might call those stories. Examples are like stories that you have, and go deeper with those rather than having that really superficial information of, you know, I did this and then this happened and then this happened. You want to have more of an example of your experience and kind of go into that in more detail and talk about the, you know, the way it changed or affected you. So because the essay is more effective in that way, you really need to have some depth of experience. So if your activities are quite superficial, like you know, a car wash here, or a bake sale there, or, you know, kind of these one-offs. I mean, they're fine and they're good, and if you enjoy doing them, great. But the more high value type of experiences are the ones where you can really get deep and tell a story about what your experience has been. And again, if you want to use example versus story, that's really what we're talking about here, is a good example. And you really want to focus on the impact. And the question might actually ask you, what was the impact? And by that, they just mean what changed, what, you know, your attitude or actions or feelings, what changed through this experience? And then what did you do as a result of that impact? So let's look at just some common essay questions. Now, all scholarship applications are different, and that is because everything on the scholarship application is determined by the funder, the organization that's offering the scholarship, and the funders are all different. So they're looking for different things, you know. So they are all different, but there are some common things with many of them. Some are completely different, but many of them will have some common types of themes or common things that are required for them. So these are some common types of questions. The first one, discuss a time you faced a challenge. This theme of challenge will come up quite often. How did you tackle it, and what was the outcome? And what did you learn from this experience? Now, the question might be asked in a different way, but the theme of it is challenge and what you learned from facing a challenge in your life. Second one, describe a situation where you were a leader. What qualities were required to be successful, and what did you learn from this experience? Leadership is a common theme that comes up in many applications, and we're going to talk about what that means in just a moment. Number 3, describe your most significant volunteer contribution. Why was it meaningful to you? Very common question or theme that comes up again in these. So again, you're thinking about the impact or change or growth that you had in the action you took and the result. So in this case, for example, what was the outcome here of when you faced a challenge? So you went through a process, and something changed. What action did you take and what was the result? In the second one, it's about, what did you learn? So you didn't know something before, and now you know something. So that's the action and result there too. And then this contribution, you hadn't made a contribution before, and now you have. What has changed through that? And then how is that meaningful to you? So you really want to talk about how these experiences impacted you. Now, many essays are going to be, between 300 and 500 words. There are very few today that are longer than 500 or 600 words. So that's actually only about 2/3 of a page, or maybe a little bit more, 500 words. So in a way, you're not going to have a lot of space to do this. So it's going to be really important that you don't spend all of your words talking about the steps and all of the different things, that you did. You need to make sure that you're saving some space to talk about this learning and this growth and that sort of stuff. That's not some, one sentence that you kind of want to tag on at the end. It is something that you want to explore a little bit in your essay. So let's talk about this whole leadership thing, because people get scared off and they think that I'm not a leader, but you may actually have leadership experience and you don't even know it. So what is leadership? In a really, really broadly speaking, it's any time you take responsibility for something. So it's any time that there's something that needs to be done. You do it, you take on the responsibility to do it. So, now the buck stops with you. If you don't do it, it doesn't get done, or if you don't do it well, then it doesn't get done well. So that's why they say, leadership requires risk, because the moment you say, I'll do it, then you take on that risk, right? So, it's a really broad way of looking at leadership, but this is what they're talking about in scholarship applications. Leadership is not connected just to a title or a role. It can be a lot of different things. So in the UBC personal statement instructions, they have some great information on their website for this type of stuff. And they say leadership can come in many forms. So again, not tied to that. We're not talking student council president. We're talking any act of responsibility or initiative that serves others is a form of leadership. So these are the two things that you want to think about with leadership. You take responsibility for something, and that thing, whatever it is, it serves or helps others. That is what we're talking about for leadership for scholarship applications. So it's much broader than many people think. And what we're really talking about here is taking action, something that sets you apart from the group. And that's why I call it a high value activity. I mean, it looks great on those applications, but it also gives you this wonderful growth experience. And from that, you can have great content for your essays. Something much better than that superficial, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. So these self-reflective essays, you want to talk about your experiences and, really reflect on them and pull out that knowledge about yourself and kind of demonstrate that you know yourself and what these experiences, why they were meaningful to you. So talk about your motivation for getting involved in the thing, whatever it was, and then what you learned through that experience, and then how you might use that learning in the future. How did this change you? What skills did you develop? How will that now impact your life going forward? And you might want to specifically say, how it's going to help if it's for a university, for example, how it's going to help you when you get to their university, and how it will improve, how you intend to take on this type of leadership role at the university and contribute to the university community, etc. Okay, so let's move on to some things that you should always do on your applications, on your essays. The first thing is to make sure you answer the question. So this might sound silly. You might think, well, of course I'm going to answer the question, but you would be surprised how many students don't answer the question, or they don't answer all parts of the question. So you saw even from my examples that each question had, about 3 sentences, 2 or 3 sentences, and each part was a question. So make sure you answer each part of the question. So here is a tip to do that. What you can do is, after you think, you've got a good first draft of your essay, read the question, and then go into your essay and find the place in your essay where you answered that question. If you can't find the answer in your question, or in your essay, you probably didn't answer it as clearly as you should. And then do that for each part. Okay, so that's a good way to go back and check and make sure, did I answer every part of that question? Find the answer in your essay. Make sure it's clear. The second thing that you should always do, your essays should always sound like you. Be authentic. Don't try to be something that you're not. Some of the best essays really are quite conversational in a way. Now, you don't want to be too informal, but you should really kind of think of it this way. You should write, kind of as you would speak, and then just make it a little bit more formal. Now, if you're really a formal speaker, then fine, do it that way. The point here is just to be yourself, and it should sound like a student, okay, not a parent, for example. And the third thing is that you need to follow the directions. You might be doing these things, and rushing at the last minute or something. That obviously that's not a good thing to do, but you really want to make sure that you are following all of the directions. If you're not, if you don't follow the directions, you run the risk of being disqualified. And that happens a lot more than students know. I've been in the room with the committee when they're making their decisions, and they're just kind of going through doing a cursory look at their applications. And they're basically separating them, the ones who followed the directions and the ones who didn't follow them. And they're immediately disqualifying the ones who didn't follow the directions. And that's not because they are mean people, okay? It's just because it's their job to make sure that it's fair and equal for everyone who has applied. And if someone submits 3 references when they're only supposed to submit 2, then it's not fair to the people who submitted 2. So I'm not saying you absolutely will be disqualified, but you run the risk of being disqualified if you don't follow all of the directions. Now, you can also think of it this way. It might work in your favor that other people don't follow directions. If you follow the directions, but other people don't, you could actually win the award because some of the best applicants have been disqualified. So you could actually win the scholarship and not even be the best applicant because the best applicants have been disqualified. So that's another reason why, you know, maybe those scholarships aren't as competitive as what you think they are. There will be a section of applicants who will be disqualified. So I suggest that you, make a checklist of the requirements for your scholarship and have someone else double check that you have all of that you followed the directions. Basically, you need kind of a fresh set of eyes to make sure that you have everything that you need all together, and that will ensure you don't want to put in all this work and then be disqualified. So that's just a tip to make sure that that happens. Okay, some people ask me, what is your best tip for scholarships? And it's not something that you probably think of, but here it is. Don't wait for free time to do this stuff. If you wait for free time, it is never going to happen because nobody seems to have free time anymore for anything. So don't wait for that free time. You need to make time to do this stuff. So you need to prioritize it. The other thing that I want to be transparent about is that there is no easy button with this stuff. Everything does take some time to do. It takes time to find scholarships. It takes time to organize your applications. It takes time to write your applications. There are ways to make it easier, but if you're looking for a quick buck, this is probably not the best way to do it. Okay, so no easy button. The other thing that I want to let you know is that, and a good attitude, I guess you would say, is that you can consider it maybe a part-time job. So part-time jobs are difficult to get right now. So maybe this could be your part-time job. And that is a direct quote from a client of mine who won over $100,000 throughout this process. She won over $100,000 in grade 12. Okay, and that's what she said to me. And this is a common theme that you will see with people who have won multiple scholarships. They said, it was my part-time job. So the biggest tip here, you need to make time to do this stuff. Put it on. I actually suggest that you schedule time with yourself to do this. Put in, a meeting with yourself in your Google Calendar. Block off, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a month to look for scholarships, and then to actually make the applications. And if you think, I don't know if I have time for this, there are 720 hours in a month. And if you can spend 3 of those hours on scholarships, then you will still have 717 hours to do all the stuff that you normally do. So this is my final battle cry to everyone, is to go forth and make those applications. This is what we learned today. Grade 12 is a golden opportunity for scholarships. The opportunity won't come again, so take advantage of it. The second thing is that you do need to read the application fully before you write. That will really help to inform how you approach the application. The purpose of the essay is to get to know you, so you need to get personal. Use those examples or stories to help to tell, why you got involved in the thing, what you learned from it, and how you're going to use that learning in the future. Discuss the impact, so how that thing that you did, how it changed something, and again, the learning and how you use that in the future. And the best tip, don't wait for free time. You need to make time for this stuff and take action and apply. So this is me. This is my website here. I have some services for students, grade 11 students, so things to do to prepare in the best way. In grade 11, it's really important to prepare in grade 11 for scholarships in grade 12. And then in grade 12, or for students in grade 12, I have a guidebook if you're a DIYer. I do one-to-one coaching, and I have small group scholarship essay writing workshops where we talk a lot about this kind of stuff and more. And you actually write an essay, a practice essay in the workshop with me. In my booth, I have a free resource for you. And it goes over a little bit of information that I talked about here today, and then some links into some free information and back to my website. And I'll be at the booth after this presentation, so you can chat with me in there. And this is my contact information. I invite you. On Twitter, I actually pass along a lot of different scholarship opportunities. So that's a great place to follow me and keep up with that type of information. Okay. I think that's it, Logan. I'm going to, there we go. Do we have some questions?
Yeah, we absolutely do. So thanks for the presentation. I'll try to ask them in the order they have been received.
Sure.
Are there scholarships for people with high marks that are not entrance awards? People that have really good grades that are already in school, maybe? Are there still like awards for them, or is it typically other qualifications?
There are, so each university normally has what they call in-course scholarships. So most students are automatically assessed for those. So they just basically, they have your data, they have your grades, and they just kind of award those. There are other types of research type scholarships as well for students who are already in university. But that's what I know kind of off the top of my head. That's not really my area of focus. So I hope that information is helpful though. But yes, there are scholarships definitely for students who have high academics.
Cool. You mentioned community participation. Has this changed at all due to COVID over the last year?
Maybe a little bit, but I really want to caution you to don't assume that just because your regular kind of organized activities are canceled, that it's okay to not participate in anything, during lockdown. People who are going to actively seek out ways to contribute to their community, they are the people who will be rewarded the most with scholarships. So, if you think, well, my organized activities have been canceled, so therefore, it's okay for me to not do anything. I don't believe that that's a good way to do it. And you might think, well, then what can I do? You just have to be a little bit more creative with finding things. So I actually have been having this conversation a lot with parents and students. I went online on Google and I found the website volunteer.ca. That's a great place to start to find out if there are volunteer opportunities in your own community. If not, it could probably it gives you lots of ideas of things that you can do on your own. If you can't find anything that's organized that you can do if you're in lockdown, for example, is there something that you can do on your own? Take initiative, take action, and do it on your own. So for example, are there shut-ins in your neighborhood, seniors or people maybe with compromised immune systems, or some people who don't or can't get out? Can you do yard work for them? Can you run errands, get groceries for them, walk their dog, whatever? And for extra impact and leadership, can you then recruit other people to do the same thing in their communities and create a network of helpers in this way? Okay, so that's kind of going from volunteering to leadership there. The other thing is maybe you're interested, your thing is the environment. Can you do a neighborhood cleanup in your neighborhood? Again, can you recruit other people to do cleanups in their own neighborhood? Post your the garbage that you collected on social media. Educate others about littering. Write to your local council about the need for more garbage cans in your community. So these are things that you can do, you know, at home. Maybe you're creative and you like to draw or bake or something like that. Could you, you know, start a blog on that, and, you know, to educate and teach others about that, post some videos and tips of, you know, what you're doing. There are all kinds of ways that you can still make a contribution without even being in an, or like being, having it in an organized way. And people are doing this. So if they're doing it, you can do it too. And if you're not doing anything, you are going to have fewer opportunities later on.
Well, I appreciate the detailed response. Many more questions coming in. What if you're a mature student, you've got lots of volunteer experience, but it was from, you know, a few years ago?
You know, it depends on the funder and how the funder views that. You know, unless it says that it needs to be recent or something like that, then I don't see why that wouldn't be applicable, especially if you have a situation where maybe you have children and you don't have as much time to do it now or whatever. So, you know, that would be up to the funder to determine. So I would say, you know, you would still be eligible depending on the funder.
Sure. Yeah, probably along the same lines, but this person founded and currently runs 3 businesses and is in grade 11, hasn't had much time to volunteer. Do you think they'd still be eligible?
Yeah, again, it'll be determined by the type of award and what it is that they're looking for. But certainly if your businesses, for example, make some kind of contribution to something, a cause or whatever, then that would be helpful. But yeah, I mean, it's great experience. It'll depend on the award, though. If it's strictly a volunteering type award, then it might not be applicable for that one, but I'm sure you can find others that it would be applicable for.
Beauty, thanks so much. So we've got somebody here. They've got volunteer work, good academics, work experience, extra credentials, leadership, you know, all of the big button topics. Are there any awards that are looking for all of these in conjunction?
Yep, most of them. Yep, most of them is that. If you have that type of experience, you'll qualify for a lot of awards.
Right, beauty. Okay, should students explicitly say, you know, I was a leader by doing X, Y, and Z, and then explain it? Should they use specific terminology like service? Do you have any advice there?
I would say it depends. I mean, I would say be natural in the way that you explain it. It should sound like you. It should be authentic. Yeah. So if that's the way that you speak, I wouldn't put a lot of, you know, buzzwords in there that just for the sake of doing that. I would just try to be as authentic as you can when you're explaining this stuff.
Right. Yeah, I think that's good advice. How about for students, Canadian students who are looking to study abroad? Should their approach change if they're studying in the UK, the US, somewhere else?
It should be tailored to the application, whatever that is. And, you know, I would say, just based on what I know, a lot of the techniques and the suggestions that I made today are going to be applicable across the board to a lot of different ones, but it will depend on the funder and what they're looking for. like I say, maybe they're going to ask something that is quite skills based or quite success oriented. Tell us about your success. How did you do it? Might be a little less interested in the kind of warm and fuzzy of your, your learning and that sort of stuff. So you just have to read the application and kind of suss out what angle you're going to take with it.
Cool. Thank you. Here's another question. Can it ever be too early to submit an application? Does your chance of winning increase or decrease depending on when you submit?
Again, that's going to depend on the funder and how they view that. I would say that it's never going to hurt you to apply early. I mean, it does show that you are that you manage time well, and that that you're interested in the award. The majority will come in at the last minute. So if the funder is actually interested in that type of information, then that could work in your favor. I can never see it working not in your favor. Yeah.
Okay, great. Another more generic question, but can students connect with you directly, after the event?
Yes, so I'll be at the booth as long as I can figure out how to use it. I'll be at the booth from 3 to 4, and and then you can follow me on Twitter, and that's usually the place where I hang out the most is on Twitter. So you can follow me there, and I post lots of great information on Twitter about scholarships and all kinds of different information.
Okay, great. And that's at mycampusGPS, I believe.
Right.
Okay, how do students get personal and really share, their unique experience when the topic is fairly general? For example, advantages and disadvantages of homework.
I would say by using examples, personal examples. So this is, a lot of like what Jane had talked about at the top of these sessions is talking about your story. And by that, we just mean examples. So if you're going to make a statement about something, tell us the story or the example to back that up. And that's going to be personal because it's highly unlikely anybody else had the exact same experience that you have. Okay, so you need to kind of think about what's the best example I can come up with here to demonstrate this thing this point that I want to get across.
Yeah, I think that's great advice as well. The more sort of specific you can get, probably the better.
Yeah.
Is it sort of related? Is it proper form to use first person pronouns like I in your essay?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, unless it says not to. I think I have come across, I think it's the McGill one where you have to write a reference for yourself in the third person, which is kind of interesting. But unless the directions tell you otherwise, then it's assumed you're going to write in the first person. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, pretty general broad topic. Where can students look for scholarships?
Well, scholarshipscanada.com. That's always the first place I tell students to look. It's the most comprehensive database that you're going to that's out there. The second place is through your high school like guidance counselor or whatever. The reason is because sometimes scholarships come in directly to them. So it might be, there are some scholarship funders who don't have huge advertising budgets and, big PR campaigns and that sort of stuff. They might just have, $1,000 or something that they want to give to a local student. So they send the information to the high school. Okay, because they may or may not even have it up on their website. Maybe they don't even really have a website, so that's a good place to look as well. But my best tip here with looking for scholarships is that scholarships are offered throughout the entire year. So you need to look for them over the entire year, kind of on a regular basis. If you're only looking at one time, You're only finding what's available during that one time. So you're missing all the ones that came before and all the ones that are coming up afterwards. So it's about where you look, certainly, but it's about how you look, and that's the strategy. And the students who know the strategy, and that's what I help students to understand, students who know the strategy will be more successful because they will know how to do things and why they're doing it that way. So looking for scholarships over a period of time on a regular basis is the best strategy. It's not a one and done thing.
Cool, thanks. We've just got a few more minutes, a few more questions as well. For awards that require an academic reference letter, if the student doesn't have that, should they still apply or should they not bother?
I'm not sure why. I mean, an academic reference is really just a teacher. If you don't have usually it's a teacher. If you don't have a teacher or somebody like that, maybe you're homeschooled or whatever, contact the funder and ask them what another type of referee would be that you could submit that would be suitable, and they will tell you what kind of referee you can use in lieu of an academic one. That would be my best advice.
Great, thanks. Just a couple of more minutes. Couple of related questions. If you've been out of school for a couple of years, out of high school, sorry, but you're entering your first university degree, are you still considered like a high school student eligible for, entrance awards and that kind of thing, or are you sort of out of luck?
Yeah, no, you know what, that again, it depends on the funder and how they view that. So some funders would say, absolutely, you definitely are eligible for our award. And others might say, no, you have to be entering directly from high school that same year or whatever. And it also kind of depends what you've been doing in that time in between, as maybe you didn't take university courses, but did you take college courses? So there are a couple of, it's kind of a gray area, but what isn't a gray area is that it's determined by the funder. And many funders will say, sure, go ahead, and then others will say no. So you need to find that out. If it's not read the application, really thoroughly. If the information isn't there, then contact the funder and ask.
Beauty, thanks. Is grade 11 too early to apply typically?
There are a few scholarships for grade 11 students, not a lot, but there are. Look on scholarshipscanada.com. I believe the My Blueprint platform has some for grade 11 students. The Zonta Club has some has an award for young women, and it's with that one, it's an age range. It doesn't say that you have to be in a specific grade. So there are some that are like that might be more based on age versus grade. So not a lot, but worth looking into. Definitely also with grade 11s, grade 11 is the best time to prepare for scholarships. Very important, grade 11. So some things that you can do, I would spend the time finding a leadership opportunity and working on that kind of credential type of stuff too.
Fantastic, thanks. We're pretty well out of time. Our last question that we're going to have a moment for is a pretty big one, but it's a popular one. Any advice for international students who are looking to study in Canada, finding and applying and winning awards?
Yeah, so some universities will have awards specifically for international students. And scholarshipscanada.com may have some, and then your home country. Most scholarships in Canada are earmarked for Canadian students entering Canadian universities. That's the same in America. It's there for US students entering US institutions, or in the UK, it's the same thing. It's a countrywide thing. We're not the only country who has it that way. So, There aren't a lot, but there may be some, so you need to look in those two areas specifically.
Great, thanks so much, Janet. We are out of time. Any sort of last parting thoughts, what students can do as next steps to reach out to you?
Yeah, just make time, take action, make those applications, apply, connect with me on Twitter, and learn some more information that hopefully will give you lots of confidence to take those steps that you need to do. And thank you everybody for coming.
Okay, and thank you for your expertise. Have a great afternoon, everybody. The next sessions will be starting shortly.
Thank you. Bye.